All right, we're ready for our moment tonight for our distinguished members. 3 distinguished members getting their well-deserved honor tonight. Jim Helms, Gedzi Bettel, and David Kling. And do the honors tonight our board members Brian DeBruller and also Brian Noble Biggin, who Biggin, by the way, was inducted to our Hall of Fame last year.
Wow. You going to get the plaque?
Yeah.
All right. Wow, I just want to say this is really moving to see this many people in the audience here before us. I joined the board of the Southeastern Indiana Musicians Association in 2015, and one of the things we talked about was that with our Hall of Fame ceremony, very grateful for the Aurora Lions Club and the Farmers Fair for hosting our event for the last 17 years, but it seemed really important that we wanted to host a more intimate event and really pay honor and tribute and respect to these local musicians that have spent their lives performing in the community. It's really significant, and it's taken us a couple years to pull this together. And Brother Biggin joined me this year, and some other new members on the board, and we took a chance and rolled the dice. And we want to say thanks to Kim Powell at the Gibson Theater here for being such a gracious host, and we want to really thank you all for coming out to this event. Moving on to Mr. Jim Helms. I don't even know where to start. I've always, Jim was my high school principal, mine and Biggin's both, and I always heard stories about that, he used to play in a band back in the day, and he used to do this, and he used to do that. And honestly, I never really had no idea what that amounted to. He was just, such an active member in the community, part of the high school. He was a big part of the marching band. He was always, anywhere you looked, there he was. And when I first started looking over some of his information for his Hall of Fame induction, I was blown away, to say the least. I don't even, like I said, I don't even know where to begin. Always known Jim as an educator. His education career spanned 51 years, including 35 years in secondary schools, retiring as a high school principal, and then an additional 16 years as a college chancellor at Ivy Tech. That's a lifetime of education and influence in young minds. What I didn't realize is that prior to that, in another lifetime, Jim was a musician, a traveling musician. He started playing music. Started playing the ukulele, of all things, at the age of 9, and his first guitar when he was 12. He began playing out early in a country band called Dempsey Sims and the Melody Ramblers. I've never heard of them, but that was at the ripe old age of 14. That's something we have in common, Jim. I started playing down in Lawrenceburg when I was about 14 at a place that I'm not going to say the name of for all kinds of reasons. But he received his first ever pay of $10 a night. Well, I did a little better than that, Jim, but a lot of time had passed since then. But anyway, Jim continued to play with Dempsey Sims and the Melody Ramblers for several years, and even off while attending college. He also started playing in a rock band. Now, Dempsey Sims was a country band, but that wasn't good enough for him. He wanted to do some rock and roll too, so he was in a band called The Rendezvous, and around age 16, he was playing with both bands, kind of switching back and forth. With the Melody Ramblers, Jim did some recording at King Records in Cincinnati, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with King Records, but King Records was a big deal. They did things there that influenced music as we know it. Some other musicians from the Southeastern Indiana had a hand in that as well. Lonnie Mack, probably most notably. But Jim did the recordings there, and actually were put out on a Nashville label called Star Day Records, Nashville, Tennessee. And in that time, he was also a radio host on WMOH in Hamilton, Ohio. This was the late 50s and into the 60s. So I'm going to hand off to my brother Biggin here. You want me to keep going? All right, I'll keep going. So in the 60s, as if Jim wasn't busy enough, he also started playing organ about this time. He just decided, hey, I'm going to start playing organ. Okay, well, that works. Reminds me of a couple other musicians I know. It's like, I remember the first time I heard you were singing in a band, I thought, really? And then I went and saw you, and I'm like, man, he's good. But anyway, so Jim spent some time playing organ in and around the Cincinnati area. And he got a gig with signed a contract with the Chappelle Johnson Entertainment Agency, 1965, and worked with them. They found him work playing organ for many years. He used to play at Glenn Schmidt's Supper Club, now known as the Syndicate in Newport, Kentucky, about 6 nights a week. He also played in the infamous Beverly Hills Supper Club, which you may have heard of, obviously, the tragedy there. But that place had a rich musical history throughout time. So, and then in around 1970, Jim formed a duo. He was a solo act up to this time, and he started working with a drummer named Jack Ketchum, who some of you may know, and they put together kind of a variety show act. They were known as the Showtime 2. Did a lot of different gigs and were as much a comedy act, show band as they were, musicians just performing. It's kind of interesting. You don't really see things like that anymore. But Jim was also the house organist and the pre-show announcer, entertainment at Beef and Board's Dinner Theater, which was located in Harrison, Ohio. It was a big show. A lot of traveling acts came through there. Ray Charles, Ricky Nelson, Tammy Wynette, the Buddy Rich Band. He's a big fan. I'm a big fan of Buddy Rich, just being a drummer, but that one stood out to me. But I'm looking through this, and I'm like, wow. And he was my principal, and he did all this stuff, and then when you think, okay, that's a lifetime of stuff going on there. Jim also in the 60s, he was involved in TV. He was part of Midwestern Hayride, the Paul Dixon Show. He worked on some news shows. He got experience just kind of observing the news directors and how the whole magical world of TV worked. He met a lot of people at WLW, such as Paul Dixon, Bob Braun, Nick Clooney. He met Cliff Lash, who was connected to another local music legend and Hall of Fame inductee, my former band director, and probably a lot of people here, Mr. Charlie Green. Charlie Green made band fun, and he inspired a lot of people, including the people that worked with him, Kenzie Bennell and David Kling. And, Charlie was a big influence on a lot of people in this community. But at any rate, moving forward, I talked about Jim's involvement with the ECHS band, and they did a lot of things. The band was a big deal back in the day, and me and Bigham, we caught the tail end of that, which was a blessing to us. But Jim and Charlie Green worked together. They worked with the Reds owner, Marge Schott. I can remember we used to always do the Reds opening day parade, and we'd get to play in the stadium, and that was always fun as the drummer because the echo in that stadium was so intense. I mean, you would hit the drum, and like half a second later, you'd hear the echo of it. And in the course of a song, at some point, you start asking yourself, is the echo, the beat that I'm supposed to be hitting on, or am I hitting on the right beat? And it's like, wait a minute. So that kind of got confusing, but, I can't say enough about Jim Helms. He's the announcer for the Music on the River events down in Lawrenceburg. He's just always involved in cool things in the community, and he spent his lifetime giving back in so many ways as an educator, as a performing musician, and just being, a good guy, a good neighbor. The ECHS band also performed for President Reagan, President Ford, and President Bush. It's it's really amazing the things that Jim did. He also spent time on the road with Merle Haggard, Marty Stewart, Connie Smith, and little Jimmy Dickens as a traveling musician. It's just kind of mind-blowing. I'm sitting here thinking, man, how do you fit all of that into this short time span? Jim, I want to be you when I grow up. I hope I can have as many adventures as you've had in your lifetime.
You can come on. Now, folks, Jim has recently had a knee replacement or something. That's why he's hobbling along a little bit. But back in his prime, I remember the great days of being in high school, and we'd have a big pep rally or something going on, and there'd be this guy that was our principal that would come dressed up like a woman, and he'd jump out there and he'd lead the pep session. And I'm going to tell you, it was one of the most funny things I've ever seen in my entire life, and I never have forgot that. But ladies and gentlemen, we're proud to have him tonight, Mr. Jim Helms.
I didn't know I was so damn busy. Well, I want to express appreciation to guys, Brian and Brian. It's easy to remember their first names. First time I saw Brian DeBroer a while back, I hadn't seen him with that beard. I thought I ran into one of the Smith brothers from the Cough Drops. You recognized Nelson Elliott a little bit ago. I'm glad you did. Nelson Elliott and I got well acquainted when Nelson Elliott was a senior at Hanover College. I was a freshman. And Nelson and I got together a lot, and I ended up playing a lot of guitar. He was pretty much a trumpet guy, and we played a lot of gigs around campus and around places, and had a lot of fun. So thanks for recognizing Nelson Elliott tonight. Thanks to the committee, all the entertainers here tonight. Great job. It's a special evening, that's for sure. And I want you to know it's so special, I went out and had my hair done today. I noticed that Mrs. Blaisdell said that Kinsey Bennell was her first piano student. And then he went on to say, and her last piano student, and I thought he was going to say Kinsey Bennell again. He had enough of you. That's what I thought. The information, I'll tell you, I've had a heck of a career. I often think of a little kid growing up in the country, riding a bicycle, swimming in the creek, fighting crawdads, snakes, playing ball in the field, baling hay as you grew up. And it was just a great time to grow up when I grew up in the 50s. I went to a small school. My high school had 66 students in the whole school. There were 10 in my graduating class. But you know, in my career, I've been places and had experiences and a great career. I met so many people. Never dreamed of people I would meet. Movie people, entertainers, professional people, opportunity to be on the road with the country music. One of my favorites of all time was Merle Haggard. I loved being on the road. Don't ask my wife about the backstage of being on the road. She didn't like it. But I did. But the many people that I've had the opportunity to meet, that little kid that was riding a bicycle years ago, I'm sure you could identify with. And that little kid kind of stands before you tonight, being inducted into this Hall of Fame. It's kind of emotional. If you see me jerking a little bit up here, I did just have knee surgery, and I'm walking around on that from 3 weeks ago. So you don't just exactly jump around like Big Bertha used to, I'll tell you that. Or like Elvis did at the variety show. I will say that if I go to staggered a little bit here towards the front of this stage, I want all you people right there, run out there and catch me, will you? I don't have LifeLock. Even though I was one of the first, I think, to always jump on technology early. I think I was the first on my block to have the clapper. Remember that thing? But as I go on through this, thinking about this, he mentioned beef and boards. I had it made there. I loved playing there. I met all the celebrities. I spent a lot of time with them. Some of them I got very close with. I actually had a dressing room at Beef and Boards. I could go there, eat what I wanted, take guests, drink what I wanted. That was a good deal. And I'd go back in my dressing room, and I'm telling you, the women that beat on that door, oh. And I didn't care how much they beat on that door, by God, I wouldn't let them out. The life of a musician, it's a person that saves up some money, puts about $5,000 together to buy all of his equipment. He meets other people, starts playing. He carries all that equipment after packing it up out, puts it in his car, puts it in the van, puts it in the trailer, drive off 100 miles that night, get it all back out, unpack it, play the gig. In the middle of the night, finish the gig, pack it back up again, put it back in the car, drive all the way home and get home at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and boy, you nailed them. You made $25 or $45. Some things never change, Biggin says back there.
You forgot spending $20 at Waffle House or what you made there, so.
Yeah, well, yeah. Usually, actually, many times out in this direction, it was at the New Point truck stop. Now, he mentioned that in my later years when I formed a duo, and I mean, we had a ball playing. And there's a guy here tonight that doesn't go anywhere. You can't hardly get him out. He was a great drummer. He drummed with me for a long time, and he was the other half of my duo. And I couldn't believe it when I called him, and he's here tonight. Jack Ketchum, would you stand up? You don't go anywhere. Maybe Jack will tell you about that good-looking blonde came in our dressing room, but Beverly Hills that night. Well, Jack, we better not go there, you think? She was cute. Woo. Anyway, I do thank you for this induction tonight. And I think several of you noticed that there's a big common denominator here tonight. He mentioned that how much I worked with Charlie Green. I traveled with the East Central Band, many places, did announcing for the band. I announced at the Bengals games, I announced at the Reds games. It was a great time, and we had wonderful times. And you've heard Biggin talk, both Brian's talking about Charlie Green. I heard the hand he got a little bit ago. Charlie Green was a piece of work, let me tell you. And I had the opportunity at Hanover College a few years ago to work on stage and help him out for a week. A guy named Meredith Wilson, who wrote the musical and later was made into a movie in 1962, The Music Man. Meredith Wilson was really a gentleman. He was so good to me. I enjoyed working with him. And the reason I bring him up, if you've seen the movie, The Music Man, or you hear the story, you think, oh, it's a bunch of garbage. That wouldn't happen. One person could not come into an area and have the impact on music and so many people as the Music Man did. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, Charlie Green was the Music Man. I'd like a big hand for Charlie Green. And a little bit ago, when you were making some noise, if Charlie was in charge, he'd say, "Hey, goddammit, shut up out there." So, that common denominator truly was the Music Man. And I know there really was a Music Man, not just the one in the story. I'll sum up what I think is the life of a musician. It's kind of like when you look back when it's over and you wonder how you survived it all. But through all the equipment moving, the travel, the gas, through all the hot, cold, snow, rain, sleet, good gigs, draggy gigs, not much air conditioning a lot of places in those days. And in the old days, not always a lot of money like they make today. Occupying your weekend, your time, and really getting into your family time, and whatever else it was in all those years, it was worth it. Any musician will tell you that. It was worth it. Probably couldn't do it again. I just found out there's somebody else in this audience. When I coached high school basketball, there was a guy named Ron Raver who was my reserve coach. Ron Raver, you're here tonight, I hear. Hi. No two guys ever had more fun coaching basketball at the high school level than we did. And we won a lot of ball games, and we still get in touch with those kids today and those teams. So with that, Biggin and Mr. Brian, I think we're going to make a little different kind of move here, right?
What do you think of Jim, huh? Give it up for him right there. And you know what? The picture on his plaque looks just like him, too. Good job, Jim.